Good morning. The committee will come to order. Before we begin today, I would like to ask unanimous consent for our colleague, Representative David Young from Iowa, to sit on the dais and participate in today's hearings without objection. So ordered. Welcome, David. With that procedural note out of the way, welcome and thank you all for joining us this morning. We're here today to discuss a topic that is a top priority for me, for this committee, for the Secretary and his staff, and for the entire military and veteran community: the prevention of suicide among those who have served this country. Sadly, suicide is an epidemic affecting not just service members and veterans, but our nation as a whole. However, in the last year, the Department of Veterans Affairs released the most comprehensive analysis of veteran suicide data to date and found that the risk of suicide was 21% higher for veterans than it was for non-veterans. Probably the most important mission for us in this room is to ensure that the VA meets the needs of veterans actively contemplating taking their own life. The Veterans Crisis Line, VA's 24/7 suicide prevention and crisis intervention hotline for veterans, service members, and their loved ones, is a critical tool to the accomplishment of that mission. The Veterans Crisis Line is meant to be VA's first line of defense for those in the midst of life's worst moments. We cannot quantify the number of lives that have been saved since the VCL was introduced a decade ago, but we know that more than 2.6 million calls have been answered, and emergency responders have been dispatched to those in need almost 70,000 times. The demand for Veteran Crisis Line services, which now include a call option, an online chat option, and a texting message option, are growing. However, over the last year, the Veteran Crisis Line has been the subject of 3 major investigations by the VA Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office that have also found serious management or organizational and quantitative deficiencies in virtually every facet of the VCL's operation. In February 2016, the IG found that some calls placed to the Veterans Crisis Line were sent to voicemail, and that the Veterans Crisis Line staff failed to properly monitor the quality of the services provided, and in some cases did not receive proper orientation or ongoing training. 4 months later, in June of 2016, GAO found that the VCL failed to meet its call wait time goals and neglected to monitor the quality of the text message service. 5 months later, in November 2016, Congress passed Congressman Young's legislation, the No Veterans Crisis Line Call Should Go Unanswered Act, in recognition of the findings made by the IG and GAO and the need for the Veteran Crisis Line to institute a robust quality management plan. Yet, just last month, the IG published another report which found that the Veteran Crisis Line had failed to adequately respond to a veteran caller with urgent needs, that the VA had instituted a VCL governance structure riddled with deficiencies and that failed to include clinical perspectives and input, and that the VCL was not appropriately training and overseeing certain staff. Perhaps most troubling, the IG also found that VA had failed to implement a single action plan to address the recommendations made in the IG's initial report, even though VA had agreed with all of the recommendations and committed to implementing corrective actions by no later than September. I understand that the recommendations that GAO made in their report last summer are still open. Given that, I question whether VA is yet to fully comply with the requirements of the No Veterans Crisis Line Should Go Unanswered Act either. That is not to say the VA hadn't taken significant steps in the last year to address the VCL's shortcomings. Last year, the Veteran Crisis Line has been realigned to the Office of Member Services. The number of calls that are routed to backup call centers has been drastically decreased, and VA has stood up an additional VCL call center in Atlanta, Georgia. I believe those are positive developments, and I hope to visit the VCL in person in the coming months to see for myself. However, there is very clearly a need for more to be done, and soon, so that we can be assured that every veteran or family member who contacts the Veteran Crisis Line gets the urgent help he or she needs every single time without fail or delay. As a physician, I'm particularly upset to hear that the clinical input is not being appropriately incorporated into operations and management of the Veteran Crisis Line. A crisis line, by its very definition, is not like any other call line. For an entity like VCL, every missed opportunity can result in a tragic loss of life. According to VA's own data, 20 veterans a day die by suicide. Those stakes, those 20 lives per day, are simply too high for the Veterans Crisis Line not to perform at the highest level. VA is fortunate to have an abundance of mental health and suicide prevention experts working here in D.C. and across the country, and their knowledge and expertise should be incorporated into the Veteran Crisis Line processes and procedures at every level. I look forward to hearing this morning about how VA is going to make sure that that happens, and when all the recommendations for improvement that the IG and GAO have made over the last year are going to be fully implemented. I also look forward to hearing any and every suggestion our witnesses or my fellow committee members might have for what more we can do to improve not only the Veteran Crisis Line, but also VA's other mental health and suicide prevention programs as well. Our mission won't be over until a single service member or veteran ever feels helpless or hopeless enough to consider suicide. I appreciate our witnesses for being here to discuss this important topic with us this morning. And with that, I will yield now to my ranking member Walsh for any opening statements that he might have.
Well, thank you, Chairman Rowe, and thank you.